So today I'm here to introduce our next speaker, Professor Irma Mooi-Reci from the University of Melbourne. She is a renowned professor of labor sociology and a founder and CEO of several startups. So I looked at the website and discovered that there's a lot of exciting things Irma is actually doing. So I recommend that you check out her website as well. From tracking career jumps to decoding job flows, Irma turns complex labor data into clear insights and occasionally into graphs that make labor scholars smile. She will present on XTVFREG, a new data module that implements an iterative mean variance panel regression estimator. So I'll pass over to Irma to let her make you guys smile. Over to you, Irma.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Arul. Thank you so much, David. And hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Well, today I won't be here alone because today I'll be joined by my dear friend and colleague, Professor Tim Liao of the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, with who we work together and with who we actually will work together for 10 years. And during this time, we also this is when the idea of the XTVFREG actually was born, and we've been actually working ever since. Together. So today, so the way we have kind of structured the talk today is that I'll just give you a little bit of an idea of when and why and when to use this new package. And in the second half of the presentation, Tim will walk you through the application, interpretation, and also show how you can best use this. So I have not prepared any sheets today. So Tim has prepared the sheets about the application. But as I said, I just wanted to focus first on the why and the when to use XTVFREG. So as social scientists, we are of course, we care about analyzing and about understanding differences, differences between people, between groups, and across time. But more fundamentally, we care about which differences our models are capable of detecting. So in the social sciences, we have two streams of literature. We have regression models that are designed to estimate differences in conditional means, panel models, and especially fixed effect models, extend this logic by identifying within unit changes in average outcomes net of time invariant heterogeneity. Now, while these, of course, models are very powerful, they come with a strong assumption, and that is that inequality operates primarily through mean shifts. Variation in these models, variation around the conditional mean, is not modeled as a substantive outcome, but instead it's absorbed into the error term and addressed only insofar as it affects statistical inference, for example, through robust or clustered standard errors. So in parallel, we also have another stream of literature which focuses on dispersion, volatility, inequality, where variance is treated as substantively meaningful. However, many of these models are cross-sectional or examine dispersion separately from mean trajectories. So as a result, we are left with a situation where we can either model average trajectories over time, or we can model dispersion and instability. But rarely is there a method where we can model both the mean and the variance at the same time. So this is actually the starting point of the puzzle that Tim and I were sitting together 10 years ago discussing about, okay, how can we make sure that we can decompose these two processes? How is it possible? What technique is out there, or what can we create in order to actually to measure inequality as a two-dimensional process, one that looks into the level of the differences or differences in the level, and the other one that looks into differences in risk. So this is when the idea of XTVFREG actually started. That was, as I said, 10 years ago. And today, Tim is going to show what he has actually written for a Stata in a Stata package, and he's done the same also in R. So anyway, so I'm going to give now the talk over to Tim to walk you through the application and how you can best use it and what you can do with it and how to interpret it. So over to you, Tim.
Thank you so much, Irma, to kick it off. And also thank you, David, to get me involved in this conference. So I really love to return to Australia, even though just virtually tonight. Well, for me, it's tonight. Good afternoon. For me, here is the night before the afternoon after, so to speak. All right. So yeah, so I've not been back to Australia for like 6, 7 years. So virtually back is pretty good too. All right. So let me share the screen with you. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. So this is the function XTVFREG. XT, as you know, Stata has a long series of panel regression related modules, and the VVF for varying function regression here. Okay, so we deal with varying fixed effects panel regression. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, and what problem does this function solve? As Irma talked about earlier, traditionally panel models, well, there are two issues there really. Yeah, one is the typical model, the variance function model, started by Bruce Weston and Deirdre Bloom at Harvard University in 2009. By the way, Bruce is originally from Australia, and so his brother is still there in Queensland. And so that's one issue that has not been done in panel data. On the other hand, the panel data typically assumes constant variance, ignores heterogeneity in there, okay, ignores heteroskedasticity. But inequality is oftentimes heterogeneous. For example, wage dispersion varies by education, income volatility differs by sector, risk heterogeneity across groups. Here we focus on groups, which can be going down to individual across time, right? Yeah. So the solution is proposed in this dual file, and we model both mean and variance. Okay, so we have two equations: the mean equation, the variance equation. The mean equation deals with the issue of who has higher or lower outcomes. The variance equation deals with the issue of who has more or less dispersion. So together, this function captures complete inequality picture. Okay, so we set up the data to load first. Well, in the help function, you also see this, NLS work data referred to. So we bring that in. We decompose variables into two components: the between components and within components. So this is easily doable using the egen command in Stata. And then we take the difference from the mean to create the deviation variables. Then we have to set, remember, we have to set the data into the panel data format. All right. The basic commands is pretty straightforward. It follows the same general structure used by almost all XT commands in the series. We also allow a group variable that's pretty flexible in case we want to we don't have to run multiple times. Here it goes over in a loop, goes over one group at a time. And we have to define the panel ID. And then the two equations there, the mean variable equation and the variance variable equation. In the parentheses, we specify the list of covariates. And so you can have identical or you can have different covariates. But as long as the variable varies over time, you need to create a mean and the deviance versions of it. Okay, so we have added some equations there. These are in our paper. The top one is our equation 4 in the paper, which was published a year or so ago in the European Sociological Review. And so that's the mean function regression. And you could, in our paper, we modeled income. We take the log of it, but just you can have just a straightforward variable. So that's modeled by a identity function of a generalized linear regression. And then the second step, we also have to clean up. We have a fixed effects model to clean up the fixed effects from the leftover. The E is the residual from the first regression. And then the new sub I is the fixed effects. And then there's a random term. Then we model the variance of the random term from the second regression to use a gamma regression with the log link. There we do the variance regression in the third step. All right. So in Stata, we have in our example or in the example you could run using the help file. In the NLS data, you could have the log wage as the dependent variable. The group variable, the example there is North versus South, the two regions in the US. And the panel ID is the ID code. And the mean variables will be the predictor for the mean. And then the list of variance related variables, predictor for the variance. Sorry. All right. So, yeah, so what you see in the output, you will see initially some iteration history. And so typically it converges pretty well under 10 iterations. If it's beyond 10, there may be some issues of collinearity with the data. You have to be careful with that. And you could also use a multi-core processor in Stata, which is doable as well. Okay, so in this example, it converged in 3 iterations pretty quick. And because the change between iterations is smaller than the criterion. Okay, so that's good news. Yeah. Here we see in front of us the mean equation results. And so we just, for the simple example, just like a few variables there. College grad, which is not the time varying covariates. Then we have 2 variables that over time varies. Age, of course, and the tenure and the deviation form of those 2 variables. Okay. And the standard state output, you'll see they're all highly significant statistically. And so interpretation, how to read. So because we have already log transformed the outcome variable, so you can see in percentage terms, college grads earn 15.2% higher wage. And then the mean each year older, the between person adds this much to wage, again, percentage, and that's also in percentage time as well. But this is within a person, okay, instead of between. And then we have the variance, okay. The variance equation, we have, again, the standard state output, and so all of which are highly significant statistically. And then we also want to interpret it. And so remember, this is the log link in the gamma distribution. And so we have to do this simple calculation. So that means college grads, among college grads, it's like a 26% more variance and then the mean of age, just using two examples there, okay. And so leads to 2% less variance per year of age increase, okay. One thing that is new in this dual file is the decomposition of the variance of the total variance in this example log income. Okay, so look like 42% belongs to the variance of 42% variance can be accounted for by the mean model, and 29% of the variance can be accounted for by the variance model, and the leftover, which is the unexplained variance, 29%, is pretty high as well, which has two components there. It's not possible to further decompose because they are not, diagonal. Okay, so individual effects plus residual. Okay. All right, so here we have step 4, interpretation. Okay, so because remember the mean model is additive. Okay, in general, except when you transform variables. Okay, so it is additive in the way we modeled it, and so with the beta is additive, and so here education 0.15 means a college grad earns 15% more because we have the log income there. Okay, and so variance equation, which is multiplicative on log scale. There, one example for the Y education, for education effect, 0.2 means exponentiation of 0.2, which equals 1.22, or college grads have 22% more wage dispersion, okay, than non-college grads, okay. So interpretation changes in the spread of the outcome rather than earlier, the mean model shifts in the average level of the outcome. So those two are quite different. All right. And so what does a dual file produce, the command? It stores standard like output, sets of output data. So then the means and the variance. Okay, so all those are requestable. And then you can ask for the different results there. Okay. You can also create publishable tables. In the function, in the command, you could also use the newer data command, like table commands, like combine command. But here we only show you the simple one using step here. Okay. And so going back to the regional comparison, does education affect wage levels and wage inequality differently in the South versus in the North, non-South, okay, not North, non-South. So we have two panels here from the group division. So we have the mean equation and the variance equation. So just listing the college effects estimates rather than the complete set. Okay, so we see those clearly outlined there. Okay, I'm not going to go over each one of these because you know how to interpret this already. Okay, some tips and best practices. So here we use between and within decomposition, separate time invariant between from time varying within effects for clearer interpretation. So be careful. When you interpret it, always interpret time invariant those variables in one group, then time varying covariates the other group. Okay. And remember, exponentiate variance coefficients. That's important. And you could also use the combined option for better presentation of the results, which is easily doable, which we have in the help as well. Of course, check convergence. Most models converge under 10 iterations. If not, check for collinearity or sparse groups and distribution within group and across groups. Compare variance decomposition. Look at percentage explained by mean versus variance model across groups to assess inequality sources, which is useful, interesting to do. Finally, theory guides variable choices, which goes without saying, always goes for all kinds of research in the social sciences. Mean and the variance, and the other sciences too, indeed. Mean and variance variables can differ. And so in those two equations, you don't have to have identical sets of variables like we did in the example. That theory guide which affects location versus which affects dispersion. So again, this is based upon the published paper that we referred to earlier, so you can get that easily. And there's a help function. Also, I put my email here because I did prepare a do file, a much more long version of it than what I covered tonight. If you want to have that, send me an email, I can send it to you because I don't think chat has the function to attach. And also on this note, because this function deals with inequality, about the same time, a little later than when I finished this do, and I also finished another one, I'm going to put that in chat, okay, so that when I stop sharing, okay, so that you can have the other is it's called the I_unique for decomposition of Gini and tile inequality indices into individual level and between group as well. I think that's pretty much what I want to cover. I'm going to stop here for questions. I'm going to send over the other information. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tim and Irma. That was a really fascinating talk. Okay, I'll start the ball rolling with the question. I'm really interested in the model. The model looks really interesting. I work in the healthcare field, and in particular, the clinical registries. When we start the registries, the volume is small, as expected, and then there's huge variability. And then over the years, I think the registries accumulate enough patients to get some decent numbers. So I think there's some interesting research questions we would like to ask around estimating both the mean and the variance. But unfortunately, in the registries, most clinical quality indicators are binary in nature. So I do note that your model is, formulated more for continuous sort of outcome. The question is more like, is there any appetite to extend it to binary outcomes?
That's a great question. The one reason for doing this presentation to get the input after the Adu came out, I don't think, at least as far as I know, or Irma, we do not know if anyone has used it yet. I know there's a lot of attention. People, started to maybe download, but some of the people I work with, they downloaded. I don't think they've used it in real research. It's important to use it in real research. And so what you raised, Arul, the question is superb. It's a great question. Because we use GLM, generalized linear models, can be easily extended to other family of distribution, like a dichotomous, right? Yeah, so that should be doable. And so I can look into that for sure. Yeah, so that could be the next release, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I will definitely follow up.
Please do follow up to remind me as well. Make sure when I get some time, get it done.
Yeah, probably another extension, Tim, that we can think of is now we have the grouping variable is based on two kind of groups. For instance, in our paper, it was unemployed versus those who've been continuously employed, right? And in your kind of presentation now, it was South versus non-South. So that can also be extended to actually include a categorical variable there. So grouping variable.
Oh, yeah, that's already there. It's already there.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason I use South, just a simple example, actually, it's a standard data, sort of a, grouping approach. You
Right.
can include the multiple groups there. Sorry, I did not clarify there earlier. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic work.
Yeah.
So anyway, for anyone who is interested not only in looking into averages and average outcomes, but also into fluctuations over time and what substantive meaning we can give to dispersion and to kind of shocks that happen in people's lives, that is a way, this is a method to capture those shocks. So, and I think that's a great, there are so many questions that we social scientists have that focus on both the mean and the variance. And the panel setting, I think, of this technique that we have and accounting for the panel setting, I think this is what makes this also even more attractive to use as a new method when
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the elaboration. There were two questions that were popped up in the chat while we were talking. First is from Rob. Does this approach relate to LMS models used in growth studies and now GAM-LSS? So if I just maybe ask Rob to clarify what you mean by LMS, in case we get wrong, are you talking about latent class growth models or something else? So I'll just ask Rob to clarify what exactly LMS refers to. Maybe we'll go to the second question. How is it different from generalized estimating equation? This question from Matthew Piercy. So, GE model actually has an option for you to define the panels, right? And then provide some sort of correlation, but I'll let Tim and Irma maybe answer the question.
Yeah, I can take it up. I know GEE, I've used it before. It's just like a competitor to the more standard panel data analysis, like a random fixed mixed effects models. So yeah, so it depends on which the current framework we use is more in the random fixed model framework, which is competitor to GE. It's different, of course. Yeah. Just like, I'm sure in the literature you can find a lot of comparisons between that approach versus GE. So the same kind, no, in the program, we didn't program that because that would be another layer of complexity to let this work in different kinds of approaches dealing with, data varies across individuals and over time, right? So that's a different kind of a problem.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, so there Rob clarified by saying MLS separately models location and scale and shape. Yeah. I'm not familiar with LMS. Well, when you say separately model, does it model jointly or one at a time or in what fashion? Yeah. So that's not so clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm not so familiar as well. I mean, there's latent
Yeah.
class.
So is that part of the growth curve modeling approach? The growth curve I have some familiarity, and so but the growth curve does not deal with variance. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like MLS does deal with scale, which means variance and shape, but does it do it over time data or just the cross-sectional? So that's unclear.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one take-home message is, I mean, there's so many models out there. I think many in the audience are often, questioning which one shall I choose, what's the most appropriate. And I think that's one of the good things about forums like this, where we get developers like the two of you to come and present a specific model, explain how the model works, and then give some real-life sort of explanation. And I find this very useful because I can sort of try to relate it to a problem that I have. And I think maybe some in the audience may also be toying with this idea. How can we use this model to answer some of the specific research questions that we have? Yeah. So I'll just ask whether there's any final questions from the audience. I know, Rob, we haven't quite got back to you, but let's have a separate discussion offline. We'd like to find out more about your model, and then will, have that interaction. There's one more question from Habib to Berhan. Which model is best for panel data regression analysis?
It
Okay.
depends on what you want to get out of your panel data. That's a big $1 million question. So do you want to analyze, for example, between difference or within difference or together? Okay. So there also depends on your outcome variable, whether it's a dichotomous, ordinal, or continuous in different ways, or skewedly distributed or non-skewedly distributed. There's so many possibilities there. There's so many different kinds of panel data models in state already. I don't know. David may tell us more about how many candidates there are in the XT series. There must be several scores of it, right? 40, 50, perhaps. I don't know. So there are quite a few. So there's a follow-up. For instance, if we want to analyze one outcome and one exposure and other covariates. So the exposure, by saying exposure, I think you mean population at risk. Is that right? Yeah. So if that's the correct understanding, it's already in the XT series, already there. You would analyze in the type of like XT Poisson or XT negative binomial model. So you would include the exposure variable. It's required to include in the model command. Okay, so that's already there. Yeah,
thanks.
but that's not really to what we do here because that's a standard, just modeling the mean difference rather than both the mean and the variance.
That's right. So I just wanted to clarify again the question. I mean, the question is which statistical model is the best for my data versus, you've got a model and then what sort of covariates do you add to come up with the best model? I think the question, can be framed quite differently, but I think it's a separate sort of question. It probably needs a half a day discussion itself. What's the best model for my data? So, Habitu, I recommend that you go to the survey design website where there's excellent resources around, what model should I use for my data? And then I believe David will probably clarify, but there'll be probably one section on how do I build my model, right, and get the best sort of model given the outcome and the covariates that I have in the data. Okay, having said that, I'm just looking at the time. David reminded us this morning, all of us in the scientific panel, to keep the questions all within time. So I do need to maybe end the presentation there. I just wanted to thank Irma and Tim for the wonderful presentation. Let us all put our hands together and give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And then I'll pass it over to David.